Hey everyone, welcome to the webinar. Today we're going to spend 5 to 10 minutes just talking about your legal obligations and responsibilities when it comes to portable appliance testing. So let's get on with the webinar. So what is your legal responsibility as a business with regards to portable appliance testing? In the webinar, we're going to cover a few topics today. Hopefully you'll get a lot of value from listening to the webinar. And if you haven't done so already, then be able to put in place the necessary actions. So let's look at some background regulations. Without going too in depth, listing every regulation, we'll touch on the main points that you need to consider. Next, we'll look at what you need to consider when trying to find a contractor. If you have a contractor already, how do you go about managing that contractor to make sure that you still comply with the law, especially should something go wrong? Most of the time, we don't consider the consequences of not getting it right. And unfortunately, sometimes there's a slip up. Something goes wrong. The contractor has an accident on site. The contractor causes an accident. Perhaps a member of staff or a customer uses a piece of equipment. Perhaps they drop it on the floor and it cracks the casing. They don't think anything of it. But the following person comes to use it and they end up getting electrocuted. So we'll look at what you need to consider when you look for a contractor and the steps you need to take to manage that contractor. We'll look at your responsibilities as the occupier of the building. And then finally, we'll talk about how we can help you take care of this process. And just to give you a heads up before we get there, we don't talk about this as some way to get business for ourselves. We do this work for free. So we don't have any hidden agenda in producing this webinar, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so if you don't already know me, you've not seen any of my webinars before, you're probably wondering, who is this guy and how is he qualified to give me this advice? So let's put your mind at rest. My name is Wayne. I'm on LinkedIn with something like 3,000 connections. Please check out my profile on there. Connect with me if you want to get to know me a little bit better. And I'll put my profile address at the end of the webinar. So I'm the founder of Bulkyroute. We started Bulkyroute because I saw that there was a number of needs from most small businesses. Those mainly being a lack of time by both the business owners, but also the staff that work in the business. Limited technical knowledge within the business. Unless you're a very large business, you're probably not going to employ someone who knows about purchasing, but also have the technical expertise to make sure you're getting what you need as a business. And then there's cash flow. Most small businesses struggle with cash flow. Imagine getting a maintenance bill for £5,000. That could seriously impact your cash flow. So we decided to offer a pay monthly plan. So basically, rather than paying that £5,000 or whatever the invoice value might be up front, we give you the option on most purchases to spread the cost or return that suits your budget. So that could mean that's spreading that invoice over 12 months, 24 months, Depending on the value of the invoice, it could be spread up to 10 years. So anyway, coming back to me, like I said, you can check out my profile on LinkedIn and see what I've been doing for the last 20 years. But I've been involved in the construction, facilities management, property, and renewable energy industries for over 20 years now. I've started, grown, and managed multiple companies in the industry. I come from a long line in the industry. My family and extended family have been involved for over 160 years, covering all disciplines from building new houses, refurbishing large hotels, to building local energy generation plants. And then, of course, all the maintenance and facilities management aspect that comes into all of that. I've managed nationwide contracts, and I've also been involved quite heavily with the public sector. Okay, so moving on, who are Bulkyroute? Well, we're an online buying platform, bringing together you, the customer, with a group of local suppliers. Most of our suppliers are very small local firms, most of the time employing under 10 staff each. We essentially act as a buying group, bringing together your needs with the needs of other similar local businesses. When we've grouped all of that demand for service together, it means that we can gain much larger discounts than if you tried to procure the contractor directly. So what do we do? Well, when you register with us, you simply tell us what you need. We source a number of local contractors to provide that service. We pre-qualify each contractor before requesting a quote for those works. If you decide to go with a quote, we oversee delivery for the duration of that contract. So if it's a 5-year maintenance contract, we'll be there managing that contract for you for that full 5-year term. When the contract is coming up for renewal, we'll automatically source new quotes in time for you to renew the contract, which means you always have service coverage without having to worry about it. Our service is free. We don't charge you. Because we're providing contractors with a bulk amount of work, they're happy to pay us a rebate on every invoice, which saves them on employing sales staff, estimators, and other admin staff in their own office, plus preparing hundreds of quotes for people that they don't get anyway. There is no commitment to buy with us. If you don't like the quotes, just source your own contractors, and that's fine with us. Last of all, Bulkyroute is a franchise business. It is run by locally based franchise agents, which means that all of your investment goes straight into the local economy, supporting local business people. Our focus is on helping provide opportunity to people who need a step up in life, particularly those who are homeless, school leavers, and ex-forces people, who for one reason or another, they need a step up to change their life. So we train them in running their own business. We work with local charities, homeless charities, who bring these people to us. We train them alongside the charity to make sure that they can run their own business. And then we give them the tools and the systems to get the job done. And then we mentor and support them along the way of running their own business. Okay, so now we're into the detail. Here's a few questions that are most often asked. How often must I inspect my electrical appliances? What type of appliances should be tested? I'm going to say this isn't really a one-size-fits-all webinar. Every building is used differently, and each has its own specific requirements. The most important point here is if you haven't already got a service contract on your equipment, this is the first step you need to take. With regards to the question of which types of appliances should be tested, well, that covers basically anything that has electricity running through it. Just the same when you look at other non-electrical equipment such as gas appliances or compressed air tools, these also have their own requirements for being inspected and tested. Okay, so we've already agreed you should have a live service and maintenance contract in place. This shouldn't be just an ad hoc service where you phone someone up and they promise to come within a few days. This has to be a written, legal contract. This is also a requirement from insurance companies. If you try to make any kind of claim on your insurance, it might be unrelated to the service we're talking about. But if you don't have a written service and maintenance contract in place, they won't pay out, and your insurance policy will be worthless. You also need any necessary documentation. As well as a service contract, this also includes maintenance logs, an asset register, a schedule of test results, if possible for the entire life of owning it or being in possession of that equipment. And here's the tricky bit that most people don't realize. If you employ a contractor to do work for you and something happens that can be linked back to that contractor or their staff, and then it's found that you didn't perform the necessary checks before employing them, you'll be made personally liable for the consequences. That could mean large fines, no insurance cover, and potentially a prison sentence. Part of that process is having a properly documented system in place to prove that you followed the selection process and took the necessary steps to pre-qualify the contractor. You need to check the qualifications of the company directors or the management team, and their staff performing the work. You need to check that the contractor is suitably insured to do the work in terms of both liability limits and the services being listed on the policy documents. It's worth noting that each contractor should have public liability insurance of £5 million, employer's liability insurance of £10 million, and if providing any form of design, should have professional indemnity insurance to a value in line with the cost of replacing the design services with a suitable alternative. And that includes any downtime costs. For example, if you're a hotel business and that hotel cannot function due to the design being incorrect, you need something in place to cover your costs until such time that service or that design is replaced and the hotel can function properly again. You must check the contractor's health and safety credentials. How many accidents have they had? What training do they have in place? Is the training in date? And many such questions you need to be asking them. What level of experience do they have? They should be providing you with at least 3 similar sized contract references for the same type of service, and those contracts will be within the last 2 to 3 years. You'll need to request CVs detailing the work experience of both those both doing the hands-on work and also those supervising and managing the work, to ensure they also individually have the necessary experience and training. It will also be your responsibility to follow up on those references, making sure that they are genuine. The contractor should be criminal record checked. If you don't do this, your insurance will become void. You need to check that they are financially viable and not going to go out of business midway through the contract. This could be very costly in both finding a replacement contractor at short notice, but also in not having service coverage. Remember also that if you don't have a live service contract in place and you need to make an insurance claim, your insurance will be made void. Last up, we're talking about how you manage the work being undertaken. It's your responsibility to have someone in place that is technically competent to oversee the service delivery. This also goes for health and safety. You don't have to do this in-house, you can use separate consultants. But this can be very costly, whichever route you choose, whether that's consultants or direct staff. But this is what legislation requires you to do to satisfy your obligations as a business. So onto your responsibilities. First of all, you need to have a register of equipment in place. On that register of equipment, if it's a live electronic document, it should have a live tracking process linked to it, which will show you a history log of any test results and maintenance. If there are issues that need addressing, these should be completed. An item of equipment should not be used until it has been either repaired or replaced, assuming it's got a fail sticker on it or it fails a test. You need to have a live service and maintenance contract in place. You need a documented schedule of maintenance with evidence that work has been done. For example, you need to see a schedule of when your visual inspections will next be performed for each item, and also your full inspection and test of the equipment too. If there are any remedial maintenance items picked up on either a visual inspection or a service inspection, these need to be actioned and completed. Staff have to be trained. We aren't just talking about one member of staff. Everyone should be trained as part of their responsibilities to use the equipment properly as it was designed to be used, and if doing the visual inspections, they should be properly trained and competent to do so. And that's both through induction training on day one, but also throughout the term of their employment. And as the occupier, you need to make monthly visual inspections for the equipment. This has to be documented and you must have evidence. Incidentally, going back to the staff training, if you don't already do so, it's a good idea to make some kind of record or a register of staff that have been trained and the date that they were trained, and any update training, include the date in that as well. It's just an extra piece of evidence if something happens later on. So the best way to record any dates of inspection of the equipment is to do it electronically. That way it includes the date of the inspection automatically without you having to worry about putting in dates and getting it right. So what should be included in the visual inspections? Okay, well, first of all, you must be trained and competent to make the monthly visual inspection. If you ticked that box, you then need to check, excuse me, you then need to check that each piece of equipment is suitable for the environment you're using it in. For example, you wouldn't want to use a domestic hairdryer in an industrial quarrying or mining environment. Another example, if let's say there's a chance you might drop the equipment on the floor, if this is the case, would the equipment break or would it still be suitable for use? So next you'll need to check the casings, cables, plugs. Check them for damage. Check the cable is frayed or check the cable is not frayed or damaged in any way. And also that it isn't loose from the item of equipment. If you can pull the cable in and out of the equipment, it means the cable grip is broken and is putting stress on the electrical parts inside the equipment. The same goes for plugs. If the plug is broken or does any part of it look unusual, the best way to view all of this is from the point of view of, does it look the same as when I first bought it from the shop? If the answer is no, then you need to ask the question, why not? If it's just because it's dirty, then give it a clean up. If it's anything more, then you probably need to think about either repairing or replacing it. Or get the contractor to do a quick test on it to make sure it is fine. If it is damaged though, it needs taken out of service straight away. And if it has a plug on it, you might consider cutting the plug off, then labeling it as unsuitable for use to stop your staff from trying to use it again before it's been repaired. If the equipment has got cooling fins, you should check that these are clear of dirt or fluff, and that when it's used it has good ventilation and air clearance. This is especially important with equipment that has internal fans such as computers and laptops, hair dryers, these kind of things. Next up, is the equipment being used for the purpose it was designed? Like my hairdryer example a few minutes ago, are you using a hairdryer to try and heat up material other than your hair? If so, you'll obviously need to replace that hairdryer with a heat gun or something else to do the job properly. The item must have readily accessible means of isolation. That means if you're using a piece of equipment, you need to be able to isolate it quickly. For example, you don't want a problem of walking 30 meters to switch off an extension lead if that piece of equipment has overheated and is smoking on the carpet. And lastly, you need to check the power outlet is not damaged either. If it's damaged, get it replaced. Okay, so we've listed all the problems. Now let's talk quickly about how we can help you get over those problems. I know you're very busy and I probably just gave many people an extra headache. But don't panic. Here's what we'll do. You can go onto our website, enter the details of your services. I'll give you the web address in a moment. After that, we'll source those local contractors to do the work. We'll pre-qualify contractors so that you don't need to worry about it. We'll get quotes from each contractor to do your work. If you're happy with the quotes, we'll manage the work being provided. And as I mentioned earlier too, we can also provide a pay monthly plan to help spread the cost of any work. We'll tell you about that when we provide the quotes. And we'll do all that legwork for free. So what do you think? If you'd like to have a look at our website, I've put the web address up now. Take a look at the website and the services we offer. We'll continue to add additional services to those listed just now. So keep checking back. Also, I'm always happy to connect up with people on social media. If you want to connect with me or email me directly, my details are on the page. Please feel free. I'm also always looking for collaboration opportunities. We work with a number of partners and have a partner program in place. So I'm happy to talk to anyone about that also. I'll leave those details up for a few minutes to let you take a note of them. In the meantime, I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to watch the webinar. I hope it, sorry, excuse me. I hope it gave you an insight into your responsibilities, but also helped you decide on a plan to move forward. That's the most important thing. Okay, I'll sign off now. Thank you all for watching the webinar, and I wish you all a great day.